Hey, real quick before we start the podcast, if you have listened to more than one episode, can you do me a favor and rate and review the show? Now, I'm not big on asking for favors, but we really want to get this podcast listed in the top of all health and fitness podcasts, not just the fitness category. This will take you less than a minute, and if you could do that, that would make us friends forever. And since we refuse all sponsors on the show, this will be my only ask rather than telling you to go check out some supplement or product we don't actually believe in, like every other podcast out there. So please rate and review. Okay, that's it. To the podcast. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Jerred Moon here, and welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Today is Garage Gym Basics. So if you listen to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast regularly, you know a lot of times we're going deep. We're covering scientific studies. I'm specifically going in and talking about breaking carbon chains with fat loss and fat burning. And it can be fairly advanced at times. And I want to just pause for a second and go over some of the basics. So if you are a veteran athlete, maybe share this with your friends if they're looking to start a garage gym or they want to know the basics of training and how we perceive a really good program. And then if you're new here, this would be, or just new to garage gym training in general, this would be a really good primer. So I'm going to be talking about it in two ways. The first way I will go over briefly, and it's just going to be equipment considerations in the garage gym. I don't need to spend a lot of time there. There are kind of three different levels that the way, I think about this for garage gym basics when we're talking about equipment. And then I'm going to go over, our very base methodology of training and how to get you thinking about how you should be following a program and all those kind of things. So this is Garage Gym Basics. Let's get into it. Like I said, I'll start with equipment. So all you need to be thinking about if you want to follow a well-rounded program is you're going to need to do strength training and you're going to need to do conditioning. That's the bottom line. You need to be doing both of those formats of training. We call it concurrent training, but it doesn't really matter who you are. If you just want to be a strength athlete, you can heavily bias towards that way, but you're also going to need to do some conditioning to be able to get better at the training. And that's the same in reverse. If you're like, well, I like endurance training a lot more, you're still going to need to do some strength training to be a well-rounded human being and be better at the thing that you want to be good at. And then if you just want to be well-rounded, great. We're going to talk about exactly how to do that. But you do need to be focusing on both. I don't really feel like it's a one or the other unless you want to get really unbalanced and possibly unhealthy. So when we're talking about equipment, you should be thinking about it in those terms. Like, okay, how do I get stronger? And how do I also condition? So there are three levels on the equipment side. So level one is just super basic. What can I get away with? Is the question that we answer here in level one. If you have a pretty decent kettlebell and a pull-up bar, you're good to go. That is as simple as it gets because you can still do your running outside. And if you can't, you live in a really cold climate or maybe even too hot of a climate, whatever it is, for some reason you feel like you can't. And I say feel like you can't because really you can if it's cold and you can if it's hot. But if you feel like you can't, get a jump rope. So kettlebell, pull-up bar, jump rope. And we have level one knocked out. There are really no further considerations to go into play here because you have all the basics. You can get stronger. You can lift fast. You can still do conditioning. That's level one basics for being a garage gym athlete. Now, level two, all I would add to that would be a barbell and plates. And that would be it because we can still do all of our conditioning with running or that jump rope that we have. But then when we add the barbell and plates, I would add some sort of a rack to that, some way where you can, load the barbell for squats and other lifts. So that would be level two. So now when you have a barbell and you have a lot of weight plates, you have basically unlimited training possibilities. You can do a lot with a kettlebell. You can do a lot with a barbell. But how much weight you could put on the barbell is what's going to keep you busy for years and years and years. So that would be level two. So check off level 1, I got a kettlebell, I got a pull-up bar, jump rope if needed. Level 2, now I added the barbell and the plates. And you can do a lot of activities and you can stay busy, like I said, for years. Now, level 3 would just be, upgrading those modalities. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we start with conditioning, level 3 would be you have level 1, you have level 2, and then you're adding conditioning equipment as opposed to always doing running outside or doing jump rope. So we're looking at things like a rower. We're looking at things like some sort of a fan bike. We're looking at a ski erg. We're looking at a treadmill, something like that for your conditioning modalities. And if I was running outside, I wouldn't get a treadmill to run inside. I'd probably get something different so you can do a little bit more targeted energy system training work. So that's conditioning. And then same when you break out into level 3 on the strength side, it's just getting a little bit more specialized. So you can have a specialty bar, like a trap bar, deadlift, something like that, a safety squat bar. You can go up to having a reverse hyper or a GHD, those kind of things. And that's kind of the levels here. You can start with very minimal investment to get started in the garage gym with a kettlebell, jump rope, and pull-up bar, and then you can just see how things progress and go up from there. And that's basically everything on the equipment side. Other considerations were just going to be what type of training you're going to be doing. Do we have some flooring down to stay safe and mitigate the impact, and do we have the space to do what we need to be able to do? And if you have all of those kind of boxes checked, you're good. There's not a lot more to being a garage gym athlete, and you have all the basics covered. Now, when we get to training, it changes a little bit. And this is where I'm going to go over what we call our hard to kill methodology, or we have a YouTube video on this called From Couch to Hard to Kill. And I think it would be good to make sure that people understand the basic framework of how you should be thinking about your training. And the first thing I feel like I need to do to explain to athletes that sometimes isn't explained very well is it's okay to move away from this perfect 7-day split, like to where Monday's always squat day and Tuesday's always conditioning day. This is how a lot of coaches like to write programs and how things, people, we just think that way. We think of everything in daily, weekly, monthly kind of checklists, but I don't actually think that that's the best way to program. I think that the best way to program is to hit all the different areas that you need to hit in the shortest amount of time frame possible to where you're still seeing results. So that could be 7 days, depending on the program you want to follow. Could be 10 days, could be 8 days, could be 30 days. So you really just have to know what you want to get good at. Now, if you're following our hard to kill methodology, here are the 3 levels within that. So the first method, or the first bucket we have, is what we call healthy. Okay, so if you just want to be healthy, and I mean that in the sense of you want to work out in the garage, you want to be healthy, not really looking to do anything too serious. You're not trying to gain a certain amount of muscle size. You're not trying to run a certain speed or pace or anything like that. Then the only 2 methods that you really need to be concerned about that could keep you, again, busy for the rest of your life and also incredibly healthy would be if you add a strength method we call the sub-max effort method and a conditioning method we call the oxidative method. So I use the technical terms, but let's break those down to what they actually are. So the sub-max effort method is really, in strength training, is just lifting lighter loads. So we're not going to max effort, no veins popping out of the neck, eyes bulging out of the head, none of those kind of lifts. We are just using resistance. You could use bands, you could use the kettlebell that we talked about, pull-up bar, you could do push-ups, you could do squats, any kind of body weight stuff. You could keep it basic at 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12, whatever you want. That is the sub-max effort method. It is resistance training 101, where we're just lifting a load for reps, and then the next week or 10 days later, whatever the split we decide on, the next time we do squats, we're going to try and either go a little bit heavier or we're going to do more reps, something like that. So you're following some sort of progression there. So that is the basic strength training you want to be doing before you kick things up a notch. Okay, And to be honest, this is the base layer you need if you do want to move further down the continuum as we talk about it. Now, the second part there was the oxidative, which is referring to an energy system, but let's just call it what it is. It's steady state cardio, it's aerobic conditioning. You could get into zone 2 training if you want to, but I'm not going to overcomplicate any of that. It's really just doing the aerobic training that we need to be able to be healthy human beings. And there are a lot of ways to knock out aerobic training. So you could do 30-minute walk, 30-minute run, hour walk, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 1 minute on, 1 minute off. You could do this, and do those off and on intervals for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, something like that. And any of those methods are going to start to lay an aerobic base where we get the cardio respiratory system, more blood flow. So the lungs and heart are working together. We're working on our breathing during these things. We're getting more blood flow throughout the entire body. Nutrients are going in and out of cells and muscle tissue. So we are just becoming healthy overall. Our ability to recover is getting better. So that's what you want to be doing. Now, that's it in the healthy bucket, okay? You have the submax effort and you have the oxidative, so aerobic and basic resistance training. You need those two things going if you want to, really hit the garage gym basics with training. That's not most people listening to this. Most people are going to want to go up a notch. But if you did want to stop there, it's perfectly fine. I always like to emphasize, your goals are your goals. If you just want to be healthy and live the longest possible life, to be honest, that's going to get you 90% of the way there, okay, as far as health and training are concerned. The next category we have is what we call fit, the fit bucket. This is where you're stepping up from healthy. So maybe you want to look a certain way, you want to perform a certain way. Those things are getting a little bit more important. And to be honest, unless you have some really deep-rooted goals on why you want to be healthy, it's going to be hard for that to always be motivating for you. Like, hey, I'm just doing the resistance training and I'm just doing the aerobic stuff. It's going to be hard for that to, for 10 years, be motivating. When you get to fit, you can start to set some performance targets, and performance goals are really the healthiest goals out there over how I look goals, aesthetic goals. And so I like for most people to bump up to this fit category, because now we can start to set performance goals that keep us in the game and keep us motivated for longer periods of time. So in this category, in this bucket, you will have the sub-max effort method, so basic resistance training, and you will have oxidative, so the basic aerobic training. We add two more elements. We add one more to the strength, and we add one more to the conditioning side. So what we do add to the strength side is the max effort method. So I mentioned that wouldn't be in the healthy bucket, but it is in the fit bucket. So when you think about the max effort method, you are lifting a maximum load for that day. And I always let people know that it's for that day, because each day could change based off of how you slept, how you're feeling, how you've recovered, all those kind of things. So you would want to do some max effort training. And this isn't all the time, and it doesn't have to be a 1-rep max. It can be a 5-rep max, a 7-rep max, 10-rep max, and it can just be more maximal than what you were doing, in the healthy category. So just lifting a maximum load. And so you're pushing the envelope a little bit more. You're getting the central nervous system involved. You're getting the body to wake up. And this is going to have more of a hormonal response than, basic low-intensity training. And so a lot of reasons to throw in max effort training. And you do just want to be careful. Anytime I talk about max effort training, I like for people to know that you do not, just because you are going max effort does not mean that you have an excuse for poor form. That's not what max effort training means at all. Maximal effort, no matter what it is, if it's 3-rep, 5-rep, 7-rep, or maximal load for the day, it's the most you can lift with perfect form, which for most people is going to be about 90% of what they could actually probably do. And so with perfect form being the stipulation, what would your maximum load be today? And that's going to keep you away from that 100% that could possibly hurt you or where your form starts to break down. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about max effort. Now, moving on to the other conditioning methodology, we're going to be hitting the phosphagen system. So the creatine phosphate system, again, I'm using technical terms, but what does that mean? Well, we're looking to train a lower end explosive pathway. So this can be anywhere from 5, 10, 15, even 20 seconds. 10 would be, ideal, 15, something like that. And so where you can do this is, strength training is actually a great way to train this energy system, but you can also train it directly with running, sprinting. If you're at level 3 and you've gone with the conditioning equipment like a fan bike or something, is probably the most phenomenal way to do energy system training. So you're looking to get a 10 to 15 second bursts with really long recoveries. So it could be minute to minute 30 recovery, even 2 minutes. Really, the goal is just for you to be fully recovered before you do it again. And a common misconception when we do these workouts is sometimes people think that they should be conditioning like oxidative, the aerobic side is conditioning, and it's not quite the same. Now, you can piece and program enough of these together where it becomes really taxing, but that's not the goal. The goal is to have maximal power output, let's say in a sprint. Again, anytime I use the word maximal, it's always going to be that stipulation of with perfect form. So if you're sprinting, in particular with sprinting, if you have a desk job where you sit a lot, careful with the hamstrings. That's why I like doing maximal stuff like this on conditioning equipment as opposed to running. And so if you are going to do it on a track or something where you're sprinting max effort, make sure there's a really good warm-up in place and slowly work up. Don't go straight from 0 to 100. Make sure there's a really long warm-up place where you're getting, a 50%, 60% effort, 70% effort, 80% effort, 90% effort, and kind of stop there. But anyway, what we're trying to do here is when your body's not using oxygen, which is what we're training in this specific energy system, you don't actually get as tired. If you run for 10 seconds all out, you're anaerobic. And if you recover right after that, you rest until you're fully recovered, it'll kind of maintain that. Your body will start to, consume a little bit more oxygen. So you will start to perceive that conditioning element. But ultimately what we're looking for is to train that maximal power zone. So don't always think of this type of training as, just straight up conditioning in the same sense of aerobic conditioning. We're training an energy system here. It'll help you be better, more explosive. It'll help you actually increase and be better at your strength training. So keep all of those things in mind. We're starting to train energy systems and not just how much did I sweat, how many calories did I burn. We're trying to become a little bit more of an athlete here. All right, that brings us to our third and final bucket, which is what we call our hard to kill bucket. So we have our healthy, we have our fit, and then hard to kill. So in healthy, I talked about the sub-max effort method, oxidative method, so just basic resistance training, basic aerobic. In fit, same thing. We have those two categories. We added max effort training, and then we added some basic, anaerobic training. When we get to hard to kill, we add two more things. So it has the sub-max, it has the max effort methods on the strength training side. On the conditioning side, it has the oxidative, and it has the anaerobic creatine phosphate training. Now, what we add to the strength training side is the dynamic effort method. So dynamic effort method is where you are lifting something explosively or fast. There has to be a speed element to your training here. And this is also why, if we go back to just like overall, what the equipment recommendations I had, that's why I recommend a kettlebell as level 1 as opposed to a barbell. If you asked me many years ago, I would have said definitely a barbell should be the first thing you have. But the reason I say kettlebell now is because kettlebell, if you take the time to learn how to swing a kettlebell efficiently, which doesn't take a long time to learn, you are getting more dynamic effort training in, whether you like it or not. And I think that's really good for anyone and everyone to experience. So I think that that's super important to be able to get in there. So dynamic effort is we're lifting for speed. There is a speed element in our training. So you can do that with a kettlebell swing, a kettlebell snatch, any kind of power clean or squat clean movement. Those are great ways to do it. With a barbell, you can just actually do like a deadlift or a squat or a press, and you're just going to go down to around 30 to 40% of your 1 rep max, and you would lift it for speed. Okay, multiple reps for speed. Doesn't have to be a lot of reps. Think of it the same way as we did with the conditioning where we're doing 10 to 15 second bursts. We're not trying to get a muscle burn. We're not trying to, exercise or do resistance training to failure. We're just doing 3 to 4 reps, 2 to 4 reps as fast as we can to build more power. Okay, you can't really have strength without power. And if you want to be really safe in strength training, you want to be more powerful. So you want to develop speed. And it is very important to develop speed in your training. So that's one thing that you want to do. You can also actually take this to conditioning a little bit. So like if you want to do sprinting, like true sprinting, that's another way to do it, or anything that's going to be faster in nature. But it doesn't have to be the 10 to 15 seconds. You can do like very short bouts, like 5 seconds, which would be that other energy system we're talking about. But when you do things at maximum effort, you're doing them dynamically. It's also a form of strength training, whether that be, a med ball toss, kettlebell swing, short sprint, punching a punching bag, anything like that. In strength training, we typically do this with a barbell or a kettlebell. Now, the last thing that you're going to add to your training on the conditioning side would be the glycolytic method. So this is really the worst style of conditioning out there. It's the one that makes people want to throw up, and it's very uncomfortable. And to be honest, you can't really experience it unless you have a strength base that I've talked about and kind of walked you through. Once you truly have the strength base I'm talking about, you have the ability to make glycolytic training so much worse. And that's why you need that strength training, so you can actually train these things, because anybody can train for a glycolytic time domain, but this makes it, having the right strength methods in place makes it way worse, which sounds like, why would I make it worse? Well, it just makes it more beneficial. It's worse, but it also makes the training better for you. So what you're doing glycolytic training, not much different than what we were talking about in other energy system training, is just the time domains change. So you'd be going all out. So this is for, you can go a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, something like that would upper end for most people before you start to switch over to aerobic. So let's just say 90 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, all out efforts. And then there are like work to rest ratios here, but typically when people are getting started and we're staying in the basics, I just say rest until recovered, because we can look at all the science and data and say, hey, here is the proper work to rest ratio, but that's going to be different. Someone who's really fit trying to do these, they might recover very fast. And so we might keep them in within what the science says for recovery, but it doesn't really matter. And then same with somebody who hasn't done a lot of this training. If it takes you twice as much time to recover, that's fine. That's ultimately what I want. I would rather you be fully recovered so you can actually go all out and get the benefit of the training, as opposed to not being able to go as hard as you like because you're too tired from previous exertions. And so that would be the last and final form. So we have 3 different forms of strength training, and we have 3 different forms of conditioning. And if you are adding those 6 things into your training program, you are going to be a very fit individual. Now, I said you can move away from like, this 7-day program window, because I said there are 6 things. So you could train 6 days a week and just train 1 per day, right? Like that's how we want to think, but you don't need to think that way. You could, if you wanted to train 3 days per week, which is more realistic for most people, you could do all the different strength training methods in a week. You could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday strength training methods, and then that next week, do all the different conditioning methods Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then flip back to strength the next week, you will still see results. The only time you won't see results is if you start spreading these things too far. If you're like, I'm going to do a month of just all the strength training methods and then do all the month of just the conditioning methods, by the time that next month comes around to strength, you may have waited too long and you just be kind of starting, not fully over, but a little bit further behind than you would want. But I just like to challenge people to not think of everything in like, okay, how do I fit all this in 7 days? Because you could try and train all 6 methods in one training session 3 or 4 times per week. That's going to make it to where you're probably not bringing your best ability to each one of these different methods. So I like to space them out a little bit more, or at least make one an emphasis for each day. That's what we do at Garage Gym Athlete. But these are the things that you want to start thinking about when you're getting into the basics of being a garage gym athlete and training in the garage. We are so much further along than, I'm just going to keep it at the healthy basics. Like, most people can fit more into their training. And if you have more of a performance mindset, these things are going to keep you busy for decades and, give you the ability to set a lot of cool goals. But that's it for this one, guys. I really just wanted to go over garage gym basics, talk about kind of the different equipment levels you want to think about, and then also in training, what you want to be thinking about. We do go a lot deeper in our training. So what I just mentioned to you is kind of the basic, that healthy, fit, hard to kill continuum is our overview of what we do. We go a lot deeper. And if you want to experience as opposed to try and program this stuff on your own, go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, and we will get you, looped into one of our programs where you can see how deep this rabbit hole goes, if you will. But that's it for today. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. To the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.